Have you ever walked past a place every single day? A place so familiar it becomes invisible? A place you think you know? We surround ourselves with the mundane, with the comforting rhythm of daily life, believing we are safe in our little corners of the world. But what if the most unassuming facade hides a darkness so profound it defies imagination? What if the friendly neighborhood butcher shop, the one with the charming window display, is a doorway to a nightmare that has spanned decades? The story you are about to hear is one such tale. It is a descent into a carefully constructed hell, hidden in plain sight. It's a reminder that evil doesn't always wear a monstrous face. Sometimes it wears an apron. Before we unlock the doors to the gilded Ostrich and reveal the horrors within, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the other chilling stories we bring out from the shadows. Now, are you ready? Let's begin. The smell was the first thing. It wasn't the simple, coppery tang of a butcher's shop or the savory aroma of smoked meats. It was a sweet, cloying odor, thick and ancient, that clung to the back of the throat. For weeks, the residents of Maple Street had complained. It seeped from the cracks of the Gilded Ostrich, a boutique purveyor of exotic meats that had been run by the reclusive and unervingly tidy Mr. Alistair Finch for the past 8 years. The smell, they said, was like flowers left to rot in a forgotten vase, mixed with something else, something deeper and more fundamentally wrong. Detective Izzy Rossi felt it the moment she stepped out of her unmarked sedan. It was a humid August afternoon, and the air was thick enough to chew. Her partner, Detective Sam Chen, younger, sharper, and with a far more sensitive nose, grimaced. "Smells like my grandmother's attic. If she was a serial killer," he muttered, adjusting his tie. "Let's hope she wasn't," Rossi replied, her voice a low, gravelly hum. She had been a detective for 20 years, and her instincts were screaming. This wasn't a wellness check on a missing person. This was something else. Mr. Finch hadn't been seen in 2 weeks. Mail overflowed from the small box by the shop's glossy, dark green door. Calls went unanswered. The neighbors, initially annoyed by the smell, were now genuinely concerned. The Gilded Ostrich was a model of consistency, opening at 9 a.m. and closing at 5 p.m. without fail. For it to be shuttered this long was unheard of. After knocking and receiving no answer, they had the patrol officers pry the door. The bell above it gave a cheerful, mocking jingle as they entered. The storefront was immaculate. Gleaming glass display cases sat empty but spotlessly clean. The white tile floor was so pristine it reflected the fluorescent lights with a sterile glare. A faint scent of bleach and ammonia hung in the air, a desperate and failing attempt to mask the pervasive sweetness from behind the staff-only door. "Place is cleaner than my apartment," Chin noted, his footsteps echoing in the silence. "That's what's bothering me," Rossi said, her eyes scanning every surface. "It's too clean. It's a performance." She led the way to the back. The preparation area was just as sterile. Knives, cleavers, and saws hung from magnetic strips, all arranged by size with military precision. The stainless steel tables were polished to a mirror shine. But here, the smell was stronger, a suffocating miasma that seemed to emanate from the walk-in meat locker, its heavy, industrial door secured with a large, modern padlock. "Well, that's not standard," Chin said, pointing to the lock. It took the patrol officers a pair of bolt cutters and a significant amount of effort to snap it. As the thick metal seal broke, the smell washed over them in a physical wave. It was an unholy trinity of decay, chemicals, and damp earth. Rossi pulled her jacket over her nose, her stomach churning. With a collective heave, they pulled the heavy door open. It wasn't a meat locker. Not anymore. The first few seconds were a blur of cognitive dissonance. The hooks were still there, hanging from the ceiling on their metal tracks. But instead of ostrich carcasses, what hung from them were things, skeletons. Human skeletons, bleached white and dangling gently in the cold, still air, like macabre wind chimes. But it was what was on the floor that broke the spell of silence. Arranged in neat, meticulous rows were dozens more. Skeletons of all sizes, men, women, and, to Rossi's absolute horror, several small enough to be children. They were laid out on tarps, their bones arranged with an anatomist's precision. Between the rows were buckets filled with a dark, viscous sludge, and tool scrapers, brushes, vats of lye and hydrogen peroxide were set on a small, portable table. This wasn't just a dumping ground. It was a workshop. Chun staggered back, his face pale, and vomited into a nearby sink. Rossi stood frozen in the doorway, her mind struggling to process the sheer scale of the horror. Her 20 years on the force had shown her terrible things, but this was different. This wasn't the result of passion or rage. This was a project. A collection. God, Izzy. What is this? Chun gasped, wiping his mouth. Rossi finally found her voice, a strained whisper into her radio. Get me forensics. Get me the ME, get me. Get me everyone. We have a multiple. I don't even know what to call it. Just get everyone here. Now. She took a hesitant step inside, her flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The beam fell upon a small, leather-bound book sitting on the workstation. It was a ledger. She carefully opened it with the tip of a pen. The pages were filled with neat, elegant cursive. It wasn't a record of sales. It was an inventory. Each entry had a date, a set of initials, an estimated age, and a series of notes. Entry 27. J.D. M. Approximate 40. Strong femur, slight curvature of the spine. Good specimen. Entry 34. S.P. F. Approximate 19. Delicate ribcage. Hairline fracture on left ulna. Premortem. A lovely addition. Entry 42. Unidentified. M. Approximate 9. Specimen acquired recently. Still in processing. Rossi's blood ran cold. 42 entries. She slowly raised her flashlight, sweeping it across the room. She counted the tarps, the dangling forms. It was all here, the entire collection. The final, chilling entry confirmed her dread. This wasn't a historical crime scene. The monster who did this was active, and he had been interrupted mid-process. Alistair Finch, the quiet, tidy butcher, wasn't the victim. He was the curator of a museum of death. And he was gone. The Gilded Ostrich became the most infamous place in the state overnight. The investigation was a logistical nightmare. Dr. Anya Sharma, the county's lead forensic anthropologist, described the scene not as a grave, but as a library. Each skeleton was a book, meticulously cleaned and preserved, its story waiting to be read. The work is professional, terrifyingly so, Dr. Sharma explained to Rossi and Chen a week later, standing in her lab, which now resembled a bone repository. The flesh was removed with incredible skill. Chemical debridement, mostly. Lye baths, peroxide bleaching. Whoever did this knew anatomy, chemistry, and had the patience of a saint. Or a demon. The victims spanned decades. Some bones were yellowed with age, showing signs they could have been interred for 50 years or more. Others were pristine white, indicating a much more recent processing. They were from all walks of life, their identities erased. There were no clothes, no jewelry, no personal effects, just the bones. The team began the painstaking process of DNA extraction, hoping for matches in national databases for missing persons. The primary target of the investigation was Alistair Finch. But Finch, it turned out, was a ghost. The identity was a fabrication. The social security number was stolen from a man who died in 1978. The driver's license was a high-quality fake. The man the neighbors knew as Mr. Finch had paid for everything in cash: the shop lease, the utilities, the supplies. He left no digital footprint, no credit cards, no social media. He was a phantom who had stepped out of the shadows 8 years ago and had now vanished back into them. He's a professional, Chun said, staring at the blank evidence board in their small office. This wasn't his first rodeo. He sets up, he operates, and when he's done, he evaporates. But he wasn't done, Rossi countered, tapping a crime scene photo of the ledger. Entry 42. Still in processing. He was in the middle of his work. Something spooked him. or someone. The first break came from the bones themselves. Dr. Sharma found a unique marker on every single skeleton, even the oldest ones. On the inside of the left pelvic bone of each victim, a tiny symbol had been etched with surgical precision. It was a stylized bird, an ostrich, its head buried in the ground, its body forming a perfect circle. "It's a signature," Sharma said. "The artist's mark." This changed everything. The timeline of the collection, at least 50 years, meant this couldn't be the work of one man. Alistair Finch, whoever he was, wasn't the mastermind. He was just the latest in a lineage, a successor. The detectives turned their attention from the man to the place itself. They tore the gilded ostrich apart, brick by brick. And in the foundation, sealed behind a section of the basement wall that didn't appear on any of the city's blueprints, they found a small, fireproof safe. Inside was not money, but a collection of leather-bound journals, identical to the one Finch had left behind. There were 5 of them. Each was written in the same elegant, precise cursive, but forensic handwriting analysis confirmed they were penned by different people. They were the logs of the previous curators. The journals were chillingly devoid of emotion. They were scientific, detached accounts of acquisitions, specimen preparations, and collection maintenance. They referred to their victims not as people, but as samples. They spoke of a society and a great purpose, the preservation of unique human forms, free from the imperfection of flesh, for a future they believed would appreciate their art. The first journal dated back to 1968. The first curator wrote of being chosen for the honor of maintaining the aviary, their name for the collection room. The shop had always been the perfect cover. No one questioned the strange smells, the late-night deliveries, the need for industrial freezers and bone saws. Alistair Finch's journal was the last one. His entries were different. While the previous curators wrote with cold, scientific zeal, Finch's later entries were tinged with something else. Doubt and perhaps even fear. May 12th. The society grows impatient. They demand more frequent editions. Their tastes are becoming specific. The purity of the collection is at risk. June 3rd. I question the purpose. Is this preservation, or is it vanity? The subjects are no longer random samples of humanity. They are trophies. July 18th. 42 arrived today. A boy. He was not on the list. He was a gift from a senior member for his own private collection. This is a perversion of our covenant. I cannot be a party to this. The last entry was dated the day before he disappeared. August 5th. They know I have doubts. They are watching me. The aviary is no longer my sanctuary. It is my cage. I must sanctify the collection before they corrupt it completely. The work is the only thing that matters. My God, Rossi breathed. Finch wasn't the killer we thought he was. He was a heretic. He was trying to protect his sick, twisted project from his even sicker, more twisted bosses. He didn't flee, Chin added, his eyes wide with realization. He was taken. His bosses found out he was going rogue, and they removed him. The case had just exploded. They weren't hunting a lone serial killer. They were hunting a secret society of wealthy, powerful collectors who had been using this quiet suburban street as their personal charnel house for half a century. And Alistair Finch was no longer their prime suspect. He was their only witness. The society was a ghost just like Finch. The journals offered no names, only titles: the benefactor, the acquisitions master, the council. Tracing them seemed impossible. The shop's lease was held by a series of shell corporations that led to offshore accounts, of financial maze designed to be unsolvable. The break came from the most mundane of places: a property tax record. Digging into the history of the building, Chun found the original deed from its construction in 1925. The architect of record was a man named Julian Croft, a renowned designer of estates for the city's elite during the Gilded Age. He was also a known eccentric with a fascination for ornithology and anatomy. In the corner of the original blueprints, hidden in the scrollwork of the architectural firm's logo, was the symbol: an ostrich, its head buried in the ground. Julian Croft was the founder. The gilded ostrich was his creation, designed from the very beginning to be the aviary. Rossi and Chun dove into Croft's life, his associations, his clients. They were the founding fathers of the city: industrialists, bankers, politicians. Families with names that were now emblazoned on university halls and hospital wings. They cross-referenced this list with the financial trail from the shell corporations. It was a long shot, but after weeks of painstaking work, they found a match. A recurring payment, funneled through 3 countries, originated from a trust fund belonging to one of the most powerful families in the state, the Vanderleers. The current patriarch, a man named Marcus Vanderleer, was a philanthropist, an art collector, and a man who exuded old-world power. He lived on a sprawling, secluded estate 30 miles outside the city, a fortress of wealth and privacy. His great-grandfather had been a client of Julian Croft. There was no way to get a warrant. Their evidence was circumstantial, a flimsy thread of financial transactions and historical associations. So Rossi did the only thing she could. She pushed. She leaked a carefully selected piece of information to a trusted journalist: the existence of the symbol, the artist's mark etched into the bones. The reaction was immediate. Within 24 hours, Marcus Vanderleer held a press conference. He decried the horrific crimes and announced he was offering $1 million reward for any information leading to the killer's capture. He was trying to control the narrative, to position himself as a concerned citizen. But to Rossi, it was the panicked move of a guilty man. The rail break came from an anonymous call to the tip line they had set up. The caller was a woman, her voice disguised and trembling. She said she worked as a caterer for high-end events. She had worked a party at the Vanderleer estate a week before Finch's disappearance. She described seeing a man who matched Finch's description being escorted by 2 large security guards into a soundproofed art storage facility on the edge of the property. She said he looked terrified. She hadn't thought anything of it until she saw the symbol on the news. She had seen that same symbol on the lapel pins worn by all the male guests at the party. It was enough. With the witness testimony, a judge reluctantly signed a high-risk, no-knock warrant for the Vanderleer estate. The raid went down at dawn. Rossi, Chen, and 2 SWAT teams descended on the sprawling compound. They found Marcus Vanderleer in his study, calmly sipping tea. He was a man wrapped in an impenetrable shield of arrogance and power. "Detective Rossi," he said, without a hint of surprise. "I was wondering when you'd make your way here. To what do I owe the theatricality? We have a warrant to search the premises in connection with 42 counts of homicide. And the kidnapping of Alistair Finch," Rossi said, her voice cold as steel. Vanderleer smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "The curator? He was not kidnapped, detective. He was retired. He had forgotten his purpose. He confused our collection with his art. A fatal miscalculation." As he spoke, Chen's voice crackled over the radio from the art storage facility. "Izzy, you need to see this." Rossi left Vanderleer with the SWAT team and raced to the building. It was a climate-controlled, museum-quality vault. But it didn't hold paintings or sculptures. It held people. In illuminated, airtight glass cases stood the most recent victims. They weren't skeletons. They had been preserved through some advanced form of plastination, their bodies posed in lifelike stances. A young woman playing a violin, a construction worker mid-swing with a hammer, and in the newest, still unfinished case was the small boy entry 42. It was a gallery of stolen lives. In a cold storage unit at the back, they found him. Alistair Finch. He was dead, his body frozen solid. He hadn't been retired. He had been silenced. Marcus Vanderleer and a dozen of the city's most powerful Mont members of the society were arrested. Their motive, as Vanderleer explained with chilling detachment during his interrogation, was simple. They believed they were saving humanity from itself. "We are preserving the perfect specimens, detective," he said, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism, "freeing them from the vulgarity of life, elevating them to the eternity of art. We are not killers. We are patrons. We are saviors." The trial was a sensation, a grotesque spectacle that ripped the facade off the city's high society. The secrets of the gilded ostrich and the collectors were laid bare for the world to see. Months later, after the convictions, Rossi and Chun stood once more in front of the now boarded-up shop on Maple Street. The sweet smell was gone, replaced by the sterile scent of dust and silence. "Do you think we got them all?" Chun asked quietly. "We got the society," Rossi replied, though she didn't sound convinced. "We got Vanderleer and his ghouls." But she knew the truth. They had cut the head off a hydra. The journal spoke of other aviaries in other cities, tended by other curators. The idea, the grotesque purpose, was still out there, festering in the minds of the wealthy and the depraved. The gilded ostrich was closed, but the world was full of quiet, unassuming little shops, and Rossi knew she would never look at any of them the same way again. 6 months passed, but the ghost of the gilded ostrich refused to fade. It haunted the city, a cautionary tale whispered in the dark, a permanent scar on the quiet face of Maple Street. For Detective Izzy Rossi, it was more. It was a constant echo in her mind, a reminder that even though they had caged Marcus Vanderleer and his cabal, they hadn't truly won. They had merely pruned a poisonous branch, while the forest remained. Rossi found herself driving past the old shop at night, a morbid pilgrimage she couldn't seem to stop. The sign was gone, the windows boarded up, but the place felt alive to her. She could almost hear the phantom jingle of the bell above the door, smell the cloying, sweet perfume of decay. The case had hardened her, made her more cynical. It had chipped away at her belief in the world's tidy order. Her partner, Sam Chin, handled it differently. He threw himself into his work, tackling petty crimes with a near-frenzied intensity, as if solving enough of the world's small problems could make him forget the monolithic monster they had faced. But Rossi could see it in his eyes, the loss of an innocence no detective recovers after walking into a room of 42 human skeletons. It was on a gray, damp Tuesday morning that the past returned. Not with a bang, but with the soft rustle of paper. A small package, wrapped in simple brown paper, appeared on Rossi's desk. There was no return address. Her name and precinct address were written in the same elegant, precise cursive she'd seen in the curator's ledgers. Her heart skipped a beat. Chun looked over from his desk. "Fan mail?" he asked, half-joking. "I doubt it," Rossi muttered. Carefully, she pulled on a pair of latex gloves and sliced the package open with a letter opener. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, were 2 items. The first was a single, pristine white ostrich feather. The second was a key, old and ornate, made of black iron. Beneath them was a folded piece of stationery. She unfolded it. The message was a single line. "You've only pruned the branches, not pulled the root. There are other gardens to tend." A cold dread trickled down Rossi's spine. This wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, a taunt. "Sam," she said, her voice tight, "it's happening again." The investigation into the package yielded nothing. No fingerprints. No DNA. The postmark showed it was sent from a public mailbox downtown, a blind spot for security cameras. Whoever sent it was a ghost, just like Finch, just like his predecessors. They were professional, invisible, and still active. They focused on the key. It was unlike any modern lock. It looked ancient, handcrafted. "What does it open?" Chun wondered, turning it under his desk lamp. "Not a bank. Not a modern house. It's a statement," Rossi said, her eyes fixed on the ostrich feather. "Everything they do is deliberate. The symbol, the numbers. This key means something." For days they hit a wall. They re-examined every case file, every photograph, every piece of evidence from the gilded ostrich. The key didn't match any lock found at the scene or at the Vanderleer estate. It seemed to be a riddle without a solution, designed to frustrate them. It was Chun, late one night while reviewing the original architectural blueprints of the shop from 1925, who found it. "Izzy, get over here," he called out, his voice electric with excitement. He pointed to a detailed section of the basement schematics. "Look, this is the north wall, where we found Finch's safe. But look at this in Croft's original design. There's a discrepancy." Rossi squinted. In the original plans, A small, faint square was drawn inside the thick concrete foundation, just below where the safe had been. It was labeled with an abbreviation they had overlooked before, J.C. Fundamentum. Julian Croft's foundation, Rossi breathed. A cornerstone. Or a time capsule. Or something else, Chen said, holding up the iron key. Something that would need a very old key to open. Getting a warrant to return to a sealed crime scene was a bureaucratic battle. But Rossi convinced the captain. That night, with a small forensics team, they returned to 135 Maple Street. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and old death. Breaking the seal on the basement door felt like opening a tomb for a second time. They made their way to the north wall, to the spot the construction crew had patched after removing the safe. Using the blueprints as their guide, they began to drill into the concrete foundation below. After an hour, the drill bit hit metal. They carefully chipped away around it, revealing the face of a small metal box, embedded deep within the concrete. And in its center, rusted but unmistakable, was a keyhole. Chen handed Rossi the key. She took a deep breath, sliding the iron into the lock. With a protesting groan of old metal, it turned. A soft click echoed in the basement's silence as the mechanism inside released. They pried the box open. It wasn't a time capsule. It was an archive. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from moisture, was another ledger. This one was far thicker than the others and bound in black ostrich leather. It was the master ledger, the founder's book. It contained entries from Julian Croft, chronicling his first acquisitions. But it held more. It was the blueprint for the entire organization. It listed the locations of other aviaries, scattered across the country and even into Europe, each with its own code name: the Crimson Finch in Chicago, the Silver Swan in Vienna, the Bronze Eagle in San Francisco. Each location had a curator, a murderous lineage passed down through generations. Vanderleer wasn't the master. He was merely the head of the local chapter. The society was bigger, older, and far more widespread than they could have ever imagined. But it was the last page that turned Rossi's blood to ice. Most of the pages were filled with ink that had faded with time. But the final entry was new. The ink was sharp, black, and penned in a familiar hand, the elegant, precise cursive from the package. It wasn't a log of a skeleton that had been collected. It was an order, a future target. It listed a name, a location, and a note. Target: Detective Isabella Rossi. Location: Precinct 12, City Police Department. Note: the current curator has failed. A new gardener has been assigned to prune this troublesome branch. Acquisition to proceed. Rossi understood the horrifying truth. The key and the package hadn't been an invitation. They were a final notice. They weren't just taunting her. They were informing her. She was no longer the hunter. She was the collection.